Hello, hello, and welcome everybody on Italian Fighters TV. I'm Rapt, and I can't be grateful enough to be joined by the one and only Broski. Thanks for being here. How you doing?
Hello, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're trying to do this new series of interviews of Italian players and international players. So to try and give a different perspective to the very heterogeneous community we have in Italy. So I wanted to talk to you about some things I'm particularly interested about: the game, the community, the meta, and so on. Hi, everybody in chat. This interview will be in English, but the moment this will be re-uploaded on YouTube, we will provide either subtitles or Italian voiceover. So don't worry about it. Bear with us for this hour. And I'll start off saying about Broski. According to Wikipedia, you've been active since 2017 competitively, but I imagine you've been playing fighting games since earlier than that, and in Street Fighter 5 and also Street Fighter 4 with Hugo, right?
Yeah, so I started playing fighting games in 2009
Oh,
when
right.
Street Fighter 4 first came out. But it was very, very casual, I was just like mashing buttons and stuff for quite a while. Like I don't think I really started trying to actually learn the games until like near the end of Street Fighter 4.
Okay.
Like the last 2 or 3 years, and I didn't even like know there was a competitive scene for it until the game was almost dead already. So yeah, I kind of missed the boat on Street Fighter 4. I didn't really get competitively involved until 5 came out.
I see. I see. Yeah, I think it's actually pretty common because 4 was, yes, it resparked the fighting game genre, but still quite niche. And Street Fighter 5, with all the ups and downs, got a bigger audience for that. And he's a Naki player. He played Dalsim in Street Fighter 5, then Oro, and with a brief parenthesis with JP in Street Fighter 6, but we're not going to talk about that. And in this year, you've been having great results in the CPT, and you were also invited to Redbull Kumite in New York. And I'm very interested about this experience because we know Red Bull has been promoting Street Fighter related events for a long time, and this year it really looked massive as an event. We also had the qualifier in Italy. It was gigantic, so I can't imagine what the experience was in New York. So I want to ask you about that. What impressed you the most about this tournament, and what are your expectations for tournaments? Not even Red Bull ones, just CPTs, but compared to that for the future.
I mean, yeah, Redbull Kumite was an incredible event. I'd say it's probably my favorite event ever that I've been to. I mean, Red Bull really like roll out the red carpet when they're investing in the FGC. So I don't know, it's hard to pick like a favorite part of it, but I knew something was different when I arrived in New York. I was tired and jet lagged, and I got to my hotel room and I opened the door and I saw a little note that they put up on the bed that said like, "Hello, welcome to New York from Red Bull." There was like tons of like complimentary stuff waiting for me, and there was like a personalized jacket which I think I posted on Twitter.
Yes,
But
yes, it
like
did.
all the players had the jackets with the names on the back, and it's just like at that moment I kind of realized I've gone out of focus here.
Oh, no
Okay.
worries.
At that moment I realized like this is not an ordinary event. This is like kind of like esports. I guess this is
Yeah.
like what esports should be. So yeah, I had a great time. It was an amazing event.
All
Um,
right, that's great. Oh, sorry. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
I was just going forward to you say your second half of the question. What was it?
Yes, sure.
What am I expecting from?
Yes, that is something particular about the event impressed you, and what do you think? Would you think and would hope for other events in Europe, America, and Japan to do the same like Red Bull did?
Well, yeah, I'd really hope that more organizations sort of like look at the Red Bull formula because there's obviously we've got CPT, which is like all open bracket, anyone can enter, anyone
Mhm.
can participate, which is great. We want to keep that, but I think it's also good to have like invitationals and stuff as well to cover both sides of it. So yeah, I mean, if if any organization wants to do a Red Bull Kumite of their own, then I thoroughly encourage it.
Yes. So if any organization is hearing us, you can find the Broski's contacts right here in the YouTube channel. And I invite all chat to do the same and subscribe. But I think they're all fans of yours. So yeah, so I really hope the same because the standard Red Bull put are very high. So can't wait for that in the future. But let's talk about the game for a moment. So the game being Street Fighter 6, of course, it had a massive release, millions of copies sold, great expectations shattered like AF wanted to. But after that, the communication started lacking a little bit. So maybe, and the business model that it kind of adapted, like the avatar costumes and stuff, the overpriced costumes, kind of disturbed the community overall. It was very strange, this chasing other kind of play as a service games, you know?
Yeah.
And we also have the opposite of the experience with Street Fighter 5, which started like a completely broken game, which was carried hard by the community and the pro players. And then it grew and sparked love, or at least some love from the community for the game as time passed. So, is there something that you wish Street Fighter 6 did, like Capcom did for Street Fighter 5, in order to enhance the communication with the community?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're kind of already right there. So, like as you say, I was thinking about this a couple of days ago. Actually, it's funny that you bring it up. The Street Fighter 6's first year has been like a complete inversion of Street Fighter 5's first year, where like you have Street Fighter 5 on day one is a terrible game by like every metric. It's the day one Street Fighter 5 was awful, bad for the players, bad for the community, bad for fans, bad for casuals. There was nothing good about it on day one. But because of that backlash, they got so much backlash from Street Fighter 5 day one that like I feel like Capcom really felt like they had to like fix this. You know, they knew something had gone badly wrong with Street Fighter 5. So I almost feel like that was good in some ways. I know that sounds weird to say because it really forced them to address all of the issues. But I feel like Street Fighter 6's first year, it was so good on day one. The day one release is like, it's got everything you'd want on a day one release. Good netcode, good cast of characters, complete single player content, which was missing from 5. It's got all the things you want on day one. But then I feel like Capcom kind of, because there was no push to keep like, incrementing on it, ever since day one, it feels like we're still playing the exact same game in a lot of ways. Like nothing's really changed since then. Not just in terms of balance, but just in terms of like overall content. It really does feel like not much is, like as you say, it's just been avatar costumes mostly. A couple of DLC characters, but yeah, like we've somehow managed to like reverse the Street Fighter 5 trajectory. It's weird.
Yes, it's think like they were so proud of themselves for a long time. It's like, yeah, we'll be carried for some while, but
Yeah,
the game is so dynamic that, and the community is so active that it's also the physiological abandonment from some players who used to play 5 or 4 but don't like 6, and it's still a rough time frame for a game where people leave. There's not like so many new players who are that involved in the game. So I think even if you do a good game, you really need to actually involve the players a little bit more. So I
I think
think
so. Just to cut in
yeah,
there,
sure.
I think a really good example of that right now is what's it called? Project L's new name, 2XKO.
2XKO, yes.
You can see from all of the work that they've been putting on that they've deeply involved the community in that game's production. Like Marlin Pai is on staff designing characters.
Yes.
You've got like a bunch of pro Marvel players are like heavily involved in that game's production and marketing because they know that like fighting games are not just a thing that a company makes. For a fighting game to succeed, it needs to have like the community actively involved in that process. And I feel like Capcom is they're very closed off. Like I can't really speak for maybe in Japan they're more receptive to the community. Sure. Maybe they get more feedback from the Japanese side of things but like certainly as far as I know in like Europe and America, Japan just doesn't really know what's going on or really like involve themselves much.
Yes, I think everybody feels basically the same, especially like in matchmaking that you addressed lots of times. Matchmaking probably is awesome in Japan, but we feel the struggle in Europe and also in America, I think. So
yeah,
it's really weird, but even if the product is amazing and we can play with Middle East and players with lobbies from all over the world, actually in a great way. So you basically mentioned balance patch a little bit. I don't want to get very deep in the wish list and stuff, and I suggest everybody in chat to look at Broski's video about the 2 changes to balance patches for every character in the system, which is something he used to do even in 5, and it's very interesting to have a very particular and poised take on that. But I wanted to ask you about the yearly occurrence of balance patches. Street Fighter 6 was born in a very particular occasion because the cracked beta was late.
Mm.
So people had access to the game way earlier than they were supposed to be. And so, of course, when the game was released, there was already a meta around the game, and people were already exploiting like drive rush, when in the beta, the biggest flaw was drive impact for most of the people, not drive rush. And so that actually made the beta so fast compared to a normal lifespan of the game. So I agree with the yearly balance patch, but I cannot put my hand around the fact that maybe the cracked beta made this a little bit rougher for everyone, and maybe people are tired of a game that should be like 1 year old, is actually 2 years old. So what's your take on that? Do you still think that with yearly balance patch is actually the way to go, 6 months or whatever?
I think I agree. I think the with the point you made about the cracked beta, I do think that kind of accelerated things, because you had players on day one who already understood, you know, the shape the game was going to take. They were almost playing like the 3-month meta, but on day one, like, and it was very obvious. Like, I didn't never like to call people out, but like, I think we can all agree that
yes,
on day one it was very obvious from the way people were playing, like who had and who hadn't been.
Whole countries, we can say.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with that. But going back to your point about like how often we should do the balance patches, I think 1 year is good for a major patch. But what I would have liked to see about halfway through the season was a small patch, similar to the one that we got right after Capcom Cup.
Oh, okay.
Something like that. Just not necessarily to like shift the tiers around and stuff, but just to sort of shave off the obviously like excessive stuff. You know, like actually, I'm surprised this didn't happen in the small balance patch, but things like Luke's jump heavy punch.
Yes,
that's the kind of thing that you can just like adjust without upsetting anyone. I don't think there's any Luke play that's going to be like, oh, my tournaments, I'm never going to win a tournament again because it's now possible to anti-air my jump. Like those are the kinds of things that are
sorry,
like,
you meant to nerf it?
His jump heavy punch.
I think we were agreeing on buffing it, actually. Just having like 3 meters long.
Never get off this call right now.
No, okay, jokes aside. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so like stuff that I feel like is not necessarily, you know, I wouldn't want small tweaks and things, or like, how do I explain this? I wouldn't want anything that like reshuffles the tier list, but I would something that just sort of compresses it a bit, so that the gaps between the strongest and the weakest aren't as obvious. So yeah, I would have liked to see the little balance patch that we got right after Capcom Cup. I would have liked to see that about halfway through the season. Maybe a couple of extra changes on top of that, and then save the big full balance patch for like right after Capcom Cup. I think that's probably the best way of doing it.
Yeah, I actually agree on that. I mean, I was very happy with the little patch with the ad release, but I never thought of like having the big patch yearly and the 6-month patch just tweaks around. Actually, I think it would even happen like 2 months in if Capcom has enough data to actually shave things off in order to not overhaul the competitive experience for players. So, but yeah, that's actually a very interesting point. So I actually kind of agree on that. In chat, if you feel like having comments on that, feel free. We have a very powerful tool like this. As you can see, you have Aldo from Savior Games just shouting your name here. So,
hey.
And so that's it for the balance patch, but I knew we were gonna agree on that. But let's talk about the meta one moment. So of course, I was gonna ask you rhetorically, who do you think is like the strongest community between America, Europe, and Japan? But of course, there's no like other answer than Japan right now.
It's Europe.
It's Italy.
It's Italy. Yeah,
it's Italy. Yes,
Italy,
let's go.
Strongest region on the planet.
Thank you, and then I'll give you your check. All right.
Thank you. I'd like my money in like a sack with a $sign on the front, if possible.
Of course, and also some pasta with it.
Also, cut this bit out when you edit it after.
Of course. Nobody heard that. So
right. Okay.
And so about that, I mean, we all know that, apart from the matchmaking, the Japanese community has so many players. The game is incredibly popular, and also the legend ranks percentages show that very clearly. But I don't buy it that that's the only reason America and Europe are behind. Also, I wouldn't dare to say like every top player of America would lose to Japan and stuff, because we've seen that's not what's going to happen. But talking about communities in general, what do you think America and Europe should do or are generally lacking in order to have a community as tight. I don't know if tight is the correct word, but I think you understood what I meant.
Yeah.
United and growing at the same pace.
I think one thing that I'd like to see more is community events of all different types. Because if you look at what's going on in Japan at the moment, and one of the reasons why this game is like blowing up over there right now, it's kind of crazy at the moment. Like I look on Twitch sometimes, and there's like 30,000 viewers in the Twitch directory for Street Fighter 6, and it's all these like VTubers and
Yes,
stuff.
exactly.
One of the reasons I think the game's doing so well in Japan right now is because it's running events like what was it called? What was the original event with the VTubers in it? I can't remember what it was called.
Yeah, I'm sure someone in chat will help us here.
Yeah, they've been running lots of different events that aren't just like a traditional, open bracket, everyone competes, top one emerges, we all go home at the end. They've been running events for like beginner tournaments to try and get new pit players involved. They've been running sort of like celebrity tournaments to try and get like famous streamers involved. They've been doing all kinds of things, and that it might not seem obvious, but I think that does stuff actually helps even the competitive level players, because one of the cool things they did for one of the tournaments is they had pro players acting as coaches rather than as players. So they had all of the top Japanese players coaching new players for a tournament, which is a fun concept. But also, I feel like all of these things add up to make the community more tightly knit. They know each other. They've spent time together. They've worked together, and it creates more of a sense of community. So like right now, I feel like when I look at what's going on in Europe and America, the only community events that we ever run are just ordinary tournaments. Like obviously shout outs to like Retus and stuff running Salt Mine. Obviously we need that stuff. But I think we also need a whole variety of different things going on, not just open bracket tournaments. I think that stuff helps build communities.
Yeah, actually, this is kind of interesting because I was actually thinking about established communities or players who are more or less already dedicated to the community. But actually, I think there is a potential pool of players who might be brought in by these kind of events. And we've seen some examples for Tekken, like the Sagem Cup. So, and actually, I think it went pretty well. So, yeah, it's actually in Europe, I think we didn't have that kind of experience for no
Not
fighting
that
games.
I know of, but
yeah,
there's always room to start it.
I see. Maybe in the future. I mean, the game is young, so also you are a successful content creator right now, so all the responsibility is yours right now. Can't wait for Broski Cup. So remember your friends
don't
when
put
this
that pressure
happens.
on my shoulders.
No, of course. Anyway, so about this, we have talking. I briefly mentioned your content creation like career. And I've been, as you know, and as all Chad knows, I've been following you as a streamer from several years. And I knew you were gonna kind of blow up in the future, but I was thinking about this today, and I was realizing that there's been many years where you've been consistent in streaming, even if you had like 50 viewers or 100 viewers and things got stable, but you always kept pushing and tried different things on YouTube, the shorts, the long content, and then the short content. So this shows a kind of proficiency about the current YouTube meta and Twitch meta. And this paid off, at least, and I'm sure it's going to pay off in the future. But what do you think people in fighting game content creation have not yet understood about what content creation is and should be? Also for viewers who maybe follow you, and if something that happened you realized actually made you switch mentality and actually allow you to blow up, to say it.
I think for me, one of the things that I learned pretty early when I started doing YouTube is that you are at the mercy of the algorithm, the mysterious algorithm, which no one quite understands. And I would say, like, if anyone's thinking of getting into content creation on YouTube specifically, your first, like, anything from your first 10 to your first 100 uploads are going to bomb. You have to be, that's the very first thing you need to accept that the algorithm has no idea who you are. They have no idea what kind of content you make, and they have no idea who your audience is. So YouTube will just like sort of throw your videos at random people and see who's watching it, who's clicking on it, like what your ideal audience should be. So like I see a lot of people especially in Street Fighter community, I see a lot of people say, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. It seems like that's the thing to do lately. I'll get involved in that stuff, and that's great. But then they upload a couple of videos, maybe 3 or 4 videos that they put quite a lot of time and effort into, and understandably, it's not very reassuring once you've put time and effort into a handful of videos, and nothing happens. 10 views if you're lucky in a week. Like, it's disheartening, but you got to understand that is like a stepping stone that everyone has to go through while the algorithm figures out who to send your content to. So like that was the first thing to kind of like get past. I think the other thing that I kind of realized is that there's so much information floating around about fighting games that no one's ever actually like put onto a video. Like there's when I'm browsing like Twitter, for example, I'm seeing all of this character tech and all of these cool things that people are doing with these games. But there's not really many people actually like taking a step back and saying like, how do I explain this to someone who wasn't already involved in the FGC or doesn't really play these games at a high level? Like you like being able to explain something to an audience that isn't familiar with it is surprisingly difficult. But I feel like if you can do that, it pays off. Like there's a lot of people out there who want to know what these things mean, but it's kind of like a wall that they can't get past. There's too much technical jargon. They don't really understand what it is, and they just need someone to bridge that gap. So I found that's kind of like the lane that I've settled into. I like explaining stuff. I'm a terminal explainer.
And we love that about you. So actually, it's very interesting because I know I say that everything is interesting, but this is genuine. So I feel like there's more information around YouTube for beginner novice players, but there's not as much information for intermediate player who may be trying to get into the advanced level. Like speaking about mentality, actually in a concrete way, how to learn your brain to ease your mental stack, read your opponent in a concrete way, apart from replay analysis. But I think few people can actually do a serious replay analysis. And I think that's maybe where people feel like I cannot go forward alone. And people just have to improve by joining a community, getting their ass beat by a pro player and stuff. So it's actually interesting. Do you feel the same about content creation?
Yeah, I do. But that's an area that I would encourage other people to step into, because the stuff about sort of like mindsets and like the psychological side of fighting games is another area that I feel is like massively underexplored. Like how to not because like I'm a very technical person. Like I like breaking things down in terms of like frames and like specific setups and like training mode and all that stuff. I consider myself quite good at that stuff. I am not good at explaining my mindset at any given time. People in chat when I'm streaming will ask me like, oh, how do I get past the mental block of being 1600 MR? And I don't have a good answer for that. So like I do encourage like more people to take look at the psychological side of fighting games, because I feel like there is a big gap there in terms of content.
That's great, because that's something I actually want to focus on. So I'm very happy to hear that. And also, I'm one of the people who actually made like 6 hours per video and did 5 and then got stuck on 100 views. So your experience actually like eased my mind a little bit, because I've seen you actually stream a lot, and also changing channels, because you had a different channel and then your clips channel became your main channel. So you actually basically lost all your subscribers and stuff. So you all have time, chat, if you want to get into content creation. I suggest you to just do so, and don't worry about maybe this person already said what I wanted to do, what I wanted to say, because that's something that actually blocks me a lot. Like I wouldn't say something that it's already known. Maybe it's not. So I suggest people to do the same. And so there was one question, because I sent a form in the Italian community. It's like, if you have questions for Broski, feel free to push them in the Google form. And for any Italian speaker or even foreign person who wants to join the Discord, it's right here. And one person just asked you something that relates to what you said, because it's about the mental. And in your streams and also your tournaments, you kind of look very stoic. And people in chat tell you that. You're very chill. And I was very curious to see if it's just something that it's innate, like constitutional about you, if it's something you've worked on in a way, or even how would you suggest to people how to deal with salt and how to keep calm, if there's anything that worked for you, or you just need to get the British citizenship, maybe that's all there is. So how did it work for you?
So, yeah, I mean, I'm not a super like angry person just generally. Like that's just kind of a personality thing. But I do get salty. Like, and like I think it's one of those things where if you've watched my stream for a long time, you can probably tell when I'm getting salty. But it's about like expressing it in the right ways, because I think like when I get pissed off when I'm playing Street Fighter, I never want to blame. I never want it to be personal. You know, I never want to say like, oh, this guy. No, he's a scrub. He's got no fundamentals. I never ever want to go for a person. I always want to restrict it to like characters or mechanics. Complain about the tools, not the person using them, because I feel like if you do that, it's more of a it's less personal, but it also forces you to think more about how you're answering that thing. So if I say like I hate Kami's dive kick rather than I hate some kind of Kami player, then the onus is on me to figure out how to deal with that dive kick, because that's now I've changed like what I'm thinking about as being the issue isn't a person, the issue is a character, and a character is something that I can lab and I can test things against. I can go into training mode. I can even try playing that character myself for a little while to try and familiarize them. So I feel like it's not a case of not having salt. It's about being able to like redirect your salt into like productive energy. Use that salt to power your training mode like experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think it's also a really big matter of ego. Like, also when people lose 100 points of MR, like they feel a frustration because in some way that establish your value as a player. And so they feel like, oh, I'm not good enough. I shouldn't be doing this because I lost 100 points. I've seen Geeko get to 2000 MR and I won't ever be the same and stuff. So it's the correlation with the actual ego in something you actually put love and effort into that doesn't pay off as you wish.
It can be very frustrating if you've any activity, if you've put 10,000 hours of your life, invested that into an activity, and you feel like you're not getting the results that you want from all that time and effort. I can understand it's very frustrating. But like I say, you just got to sort of like channel it into a useful output rather than just getting angry and getting personal, because some people don't do that. Some people channel their salt into getting personal, and that just makes things worse.
Yeah,
like you're gonna alienate yourself from the community if you do that. So you're just gonna make things worse for yourself.
Yeah, actually, this is a daily reminder to, if able, to get in touch with your community wherever you are. So this will be like a starting point to even learn how to deal with salt, because getting in touch with another person who generally we can say that people who play the craziest are actually the nicest person around when you meet them in person. I think that's a general rule.
That's a consistent rule. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a consistent rule. So, and this will enhance your ability to like resize the expectation of what's happening to the game. It's just a game. So,
and I also think, sorry, just to cut in, I also think that like if you get more involved in your community as well, it makes things more personal when you're dealing with other players. Because like if you're just playing someone online, it's very easy to kind of depersonalize your opponent as just being like not a person. They're just a character on a screen. So when I get mad and when I get pissed off with my opponent, it's easier for me to do that if I don't know who they are. But if I'm playing someone that I've met in real life, that I've hung around with, that I get on well with, I don't feel salty at all, because it's like it's a person, it's someone I know. So like getting involved with your community actually kind of in a weird way makes you less salty, I think, because they stop being characters on a screen and they start being a person somewhere in the world just doing their thing,
Yeah, exactly. Even because if you happen to play against Ending Walker, which he has into his gameplay to do something that tilts the opponent, as you see.
The EXDP on Wake Up, yeah.
Yeah, EXDP on Wake Up, like 4 crouching meter kick with DJ on block in a row and stuff. And you will think that the other person is actually disrespecting you, which is very far from true, at least for most people. So get in touch with the other people and you realize all the possible treasures you might find around the community. So yeah, about that, you were talking about the growth in general, about people. And as I told you, I'm very interested in actually helping intermediate player to get more on the mental side of fighting games and stuff. But in general, we've seen that we can say there are people who are hard stuck at 1500 in master rank or even lower. And then there is a big group of people around 1600 and maximum 1800 or lower, 1750 and stuff. And then there's the upper group who are trying to get to legend and stuff. So if you feel like addressing these three groups, I would ask you, compared to with in mind the European ranking people you experienced, actually some kind of homeworks and tips to work on in general, which might apply not depending on the character you play. So for 1500 or below, what would you suggest to work on?
So I don't really break up my advice into different categories based on MR, because I feel like everyone's doing the same things. You know, the mistakes that you make at 1500 MR don't suddenly disappear in 1600 MR. So I don't really like segment it like that. I feel like maybe you make less mistakes as you get up further up the ladder, but a lot of people are making the same mistakes. So like the thing that I always tell people to do, like my usual go-to advice, I know it sounds like it's the thing that everyone says, study your replays. Like that's an obvious thing to say.
Yeah.
But what I specifically ask people to do is not just study the replays, but make a note of every single time you got hit and what you got hit by and tally it up. And do this across a bunch of different replays and see if you can spot any trends. Am I getting opened up by jumps more often than everything else? Am I getting thrown, or am I getting shimmied? Like, you'll notice the more you look through your replays, you'll notice patterns of things that hit you more than others. Like, even for myself, like, I'm not perfect. I know I have a bad habit of delay teching in the corner too much. I still delay tech too much. I'm not willing to take enough throws. And I know that. I know my own weaknesses as a player. So a lot of players, I feel like if you come to me and tell me that you don't even know your own weaknesses, it's because you're not looking at that information, or you're not. The other thing I see is that some players will watch their own replays, but they are unable to sort of see past their own ego when they're watching the replay. They're not able to look at it objectively. So they'll see the replay, they'll see, 5 very serious mistakes, but because they kind of don't want to admit that they're mistakes, they won't like consider them. So that's why I say, like, be really clinical. Treat the replays like you're watching a complete stranger. Be kind of harsh about yourself. Like, you got to be honest with yourself and say where you're making the mistakes. So I think that's the best advice I have. And also the other thing is to make notes of where things went well as well. Like, you don't want to be too negative and just focus on where you get hit. You also want to look at like where you did well. Are your combos clean? Are you landing lots of hits? Is your offense, is your rush down going well? Like, you don't want to just know your weaknesses as a player. You also want to know your strengths as well. So yeah, just go in with a notepad. Just write down every single time you got hit, and also when your opponent got hit, and just see if you can notice any trends. And I think that's just useful advice at all the different MR brackets.
All right. So just quick question. Do you have like notes of your opponent?
I don't take notes of actual players. I know a lot of people do that. Like, I don't know if you've seen Ending Walker's notes.
I've seen Mr. Crimson's Death Note. He has like a black notebook.
Ending Walker has like a novel. It's like this thick. He's got like 3 pages of solid notes about like every player's habits. But I don't really find that useful, because I tend to just sort of remember what players do. Maybe I've just got a good memory or something, but like once I've played someone enough, I kind of know what their habits and their play style is. So that helps me. Maybe I think that the downside of my way of doing things is that it makes me vulnerable to players that I've never played before. So like if I run into like a European player in bracket, I'll almost certainly know what their habits are. I have a good idea of like how aggressive or defensive or whatever they are, but sometimes I'll get put up against like an international player who I've never played before, and then I can get a bit jump scared because I don't really know. They might do like round start, drive, rush, throw, or something, and I just kind of freaks me out a little bit. So I think people should write down notes about players, but I've got to be honest, I'm a little bit lazy and I don't do it myself.
Yeah, but actually, I envy you about that. But in general, writing notes about opponents, or in general, also your weaknesses, as Broski said, helps you like teaching your brain to actually recognize pattern in real time. Also, the more you take notes, the more you'll be able to come up on the spot with solutions to situation you don't know about. So that's actually the most fascinating thing about I found in fighting games. So we actually have some times because this was the roster of prepared questions I have. So I'm just gonna take your time for a little bit more to ask you something about the mana set you had in Redbull Kumite. I suggest everyone to go and see Broski versus Menardi, who was maybe the only match where Menardi actually was scared, because as you can see, he destroyed every other person, every other competitor up to top one. And Broski made a detailed analysis on his YouTube, so I suggest you to go for that. But I noticed there was like a 2-0 in the beginning, and it looked like in the beginning it was going to be a steamroll of any kind. In that moment, did something change in your mind when you went from 2-0 to 2-1 and stuff?
Kind of. I was not happy with the way the set was going. But it wasn't necessarily that I thought that I wasn't kind of like frustrated with the way that I was playing because I wanted to win. I mean, I did want to win, but it was hard to explain. It was kind of like I was just mad at the time that this was going to be a bad show. Like Redbull Kumite is a weird event because it's more like a show. It's very much like a spectator oriented event. So like obviously I wanted to win it, but I also wanted to make sure that whatever happened, at the very least, it would be an entertaining event. And the previous matches before mine were just washes. Like if you look through the first round of matches, it was just 5-0, 5-1, 5-0, 5-0, 5-0. And I really did not want to go home and just be at like a 5-0 loss. So like I was kind of frustrated at that point. So I really like wanted to turn it around from there. And I actually knew if I could get one game, my thought process was that if I could get one game on the board, then I would definitely play a lot better after that. Because once I know that it's not going to be a 5-0, once I've got that first win, then I would relax into the set more. And so you can't really see it on the footage. I think I looked through it at the time. But after I won that one game, that first game, like I was like getting hype on the stage. Like I wasn't hyped throughout the entire thing, but just that very first win, I was like, yes, let's go. Because I was like, okay, I can relax into this set now. I don't have to worry about a 5-0. It's not going to be a wash.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you get perfected on the first round that you're going to get double perfect. You're just going to mash EXDP or super just to not get a double perfect.
Just get that one extra hit to save a bit of face. It's that kind of feeling. So yeah, getting one win on the board definitely helped a lot after that. And then just from there on, it was just kind of back and forth. But I felt a lot more relaxed after I got one win. I feel like I think I watched Angry Bird was live streaming himself watching from home at the time. And I think he said the same thing when he was watching it. He said, like, if Broski doesn't get one game on the board before the first 3 games, it's going to be a wash. Mm-hmm. And like, I felt the exact same way. So like, you really have to get one game in, or Mena is like a machine.
Yeah.
if you give that guy an inch, he will take a mile. So it was very important to get that one game.
Now I understand. Yes. Also, as you said, the Redbull Kumite is basically the biggest stage you might have as a fighting game player, even more than Evo in some ways. So I can understand the pressure. Also, with a live audience, I cannot imagine what it was like to be there. And yeah, so thank you so much for that. I have a couple mean questions, very quick, from the audience. One is why capybaras, even if I already know the answer because capybaras, but
do you need an explanation for why you like something?
I don't, but you know. People in chat.
It's just a raw emotional response. I see a capybara and I think, wow, look at that. That's great. Good job on being a capybara.
So relatable and so true. And expectation of Nakuma, are you gonna try him?
I'm gonna try him. I try every DLC character when they come out just to sort of test them, and also because I think it like we were talking about a bit earlier about like ways that you can improve once you get past like 1500 or 1600 MR. One of the ones that I really recommend is playing other characters, because it gives you so much more perspective on how to counter that character. Like if I was put up against an Ed in tournament without having played him for a couple of weeks myself when he first came out, I would have no idea how to counter that character. And I still see people getting knowledge check like crazy. Like Ed specifically, when I watch people play against like Momochi and stuff, like no disrespect to the people that lose to Momochi, but there are so many knowledge checks that like Ed players are getting away with right now. Like light blitz on block, people aren't punishing that. It's -5. Like all these little things that really benefit you from playing that character. So yeah, I'm gonna play Akuma when he comes out. I'll probably take him to like, I don't know, master rank or 1700 MR or something. Just figure out the character, see if I like him, and hopefully he doesn't drop at the exact same time as the balance patch, because I want to have a bit of a gap between Akuma and everything else, just because my content schedule is going to be overloaded.
Yeah, and also because you have an A.K.I coming, so it's gonna be very interesting. I suggest you to follow.
I've got way too much homework to do.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're a big boy, so good luck with that. And do you think having a secondary works in Street Fighter 6? Very quickly, yes or no?
Not really. I don't think so. I don't think you need secondaries in this game. Especially if you play the strongest characters in this game, if you play Luke or Chun-Li, Cammy, these kinds of characters are extremely well-rounded. They're not just strong, but they're also like very well-rounded. So most of them only have at worst. Sometimes you've got 0 bad matchups. Like I don't think Luke outright loses to anyone, but like the other strong characters maybe have like 1 awkward matchup. I've heard Cammy players say they don't like Blanca and stuff like that, but the time investment you would need to pick up a Blanca counter for that 1 matchup is just not worth it, I think. So I don't really think you should be playing 2 characters in this game, unless maybe if you play 2 bad characters, like that both have rough matchups but somehow fit together, like one character's bad matchups fix the other one's bad matchups, maybe. But if you're playing a strong character, no, you don't need a second character.
I understand. Yeah. Also, if you're playing 2 bad characters, pick a third good one, please. And all right. So, do you prefer white? Do you prefer to take notes on paper or on your phone? Danny Fighter asked in chat.
I just use Notepad on my computer usually.
All right, TXT boy. I completely agree on that. And the last question from an unknown source. When are you going to stop being a cheapskate and buy an actual espresso machine?
I have an espresso machine. It's just hand activated. It's a manual espresso machine. The thing about the espresso situation is that I don't want to, when I do decide to finally get like a proper expensive espresso machine, I want to go big from the start. I want to go for like high end, top of the line stuff. I don't want to get like a cheap one and then after 6 months throw it away and get a better one. I don't want to do like incremental upgrades. So like someday I'm going to roll up on Twitter with a shiny brand new, like, I don't know, Gadget Classic or something like that. But until then, I don't want to try a cheap one first.
All right. Okay, so I think that's gonna be it for today. So you can find Broski on Twitter with Broski FGC. Yes, so all in the same word. And Broski streams on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and hopefully back again on Sunday. This is something I need to ask you every time I see you.
Kingdom Hearts
but
4.
Of course, it's gonna be too far away. Give us something before that, please.
It's coming out any day now.
Yeah, sure, of course. Anyway, from Italian 3 p.m., so UK time 2 p.m., every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and also almost bi-weekly content, 3 weeks, 3 videos a week, maybe?
That's what I aim for. It's a little bit hit and miss. Like right now is a bit of an awkward time because we're in between seasons. So like the content's been a bit all over the place because there's like no tournaments and we're all just speculating about what might happen next. There's not really much concrete stuff happening. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, once season 2 and Akuma and all that stuff gets ironed out, then should be back to 3 videos a week, hopefully.
All right. Also, yeah, you've been doing like big sets with Ending Walker, Gustavo, and stuff. So I think that's also a good way to, unite the need for content into having actually a good time. And I was really enjoying that. So
yeah. One more thing I should say, like we were just going way back to the topic about like YouTube, is that like a lot of players are already streaming this game and not doing YouTube, which it was actually Brian F that first told me, like explained this to me, which is that like if you're doing Twitch but you're not doing YouTube, it's just wasting. It's just a waste of good content. Like there's plenty of people who are already making good matches and things that would work well on YouTube on their Twitch channel, and then just not posting it across. So like if you're already streaming, you might as well start a YouTube channel because you can just double up the same content and put it across from one to the other. So that's also shout out to Brian for knocking that message into my head.
Yeah, actually, Brian was the first to actually implement the Ludwig strategy, because it was Ludwig who said, if you're streaming and not streaming something that can easily become a YouTube video, you're doing it wrong. And I think it actually paid off for Brian. It's paying off for you and stuff. So this is a general suggestion for everyone who's going into content creation. So thank you so much, Broski, for your time here. I'm going to stay here a little bit and chat in Italian with the community and see the aftermath of this. And I'll see you tomorrow on your stream.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, Broski. All right. Ragazzi, come andiamo? Vi è piaciuta? È stato interessante? È stato tutto comprensibile? Mettiamo un po' di musichina. Se parte. Italiano, non proprio. Vuoi chattare? No, non posso chattare, dovrei chiamare Totetta. Grazie Dani, molto chiaro e bello, sono contento. Broski, vabbè, è un fenomeno, ragazzi, non lo sapete. A parte come persone in generale, però si vede che ha una visione molto chiara sia del gioco sia del meta, della divulgazione di contenuti. Broski lo sistemo io per il caffè, va bene. Grazie Psychro per l'ottima intervista, mi fa molto piacere. Mostra le prove che quella è una candela, per favore. Incredibile Broski, grande Broski, lo amo. Sì, anche lo amo. Però non potrà mai essere nostro, purtroppo. Nel bicchiere me l'ha chiesto Broski, no, te l'ha chiesto Toffo, io lo so. Non è quel tipo di gara. Allora, signori, io spero che questo tipo di content vi stia piacendo, perché è una cosa su cui vorrei investire del tempo. Io non ho avuto la possibilità di fare altre domande che mi sono state fatte. Broski aveva il limite delle 9 in generale e volevo provare a mantenere una linea di discorsi tra tutti, quindi passare da un argomento all'altro in modo troppo repentino forse mi avrebbe scombussolato un po' le idee. Non credo che l'intervista avrebbe avuto lo stesso approccio. Sto provando a migliorare, ma credo sia andata bene. Però gioco un po' in casa perché insomma, ci conosciamo da tempo e so che sarà andato bene. Bene, sono contento. Vi anticipo che vorrei comunque continuare a intervistare persone italiane, sia player che altre persone rilevanti nella scena. Sono anche a casa, giusto? Vi anticipo che avremo un'intervista in italiano, ma non di un giocatore italiano. Perché ho contattato un player italiano, che è un player di origini italiane, che ha accettato di fare un'intervista con me, che è un giocatore relativamente nuovo nella scena, ma si è già affermato come uno dei più forti, che è Randamb. Quindi avrò il piacere di intervistare Randamb se non prossima settimana, quella dopo. La potrò intervistare tutti voi, signori. E piano piano vorrei continuare questo trend, se siamo tutti d'accordo. Ora, è stato annunciato abbastanza in fretta perché Broski mi ha dato la disponibilità per stasera, io ero libero, avevo casa per me, quindi ho voluto coglierlo al volo. Però se riusciamo a mantenere una certa regolarità, se non una volta a martedì, ma almeno una volta a settimana o qualcosa di simile, io vorrei continuare a fare questo genere di cose. Originale, la famiglia italiana, sì. Jeremy Ray, va bene, Mbare Jeremy. Quindi se avete delle proposte su chi vorreste intervistato, che sia accessibile almeno, fatemi sapere. Ehm, non so, non si può manco essere ma non forte in Italia, non se la ma non forte. Quindi 2 italiane a Red Bull, esattamente, 2 italiane a Red Bull. Quindi vediamo. Allora, se qualcuno volesse darmi una mano a fare i sottotitoli di questo video, io vi sarei eternamente grato, perché sarà una cosa che dovrò fare io o forse qualcun altro dello staff di FNI, perché mi piacerebbe rilasciare questa intervista in un tempo compatibile. Adesso devo caricare quella con Garantino. Ho pagato per Restrimaio un mese a 20 € per aprire la cosa senza loghi, con gli optional che mi servono e tutto, quindi se va bene sono disposto a fare un investimento mensile per questo, poi intervisterò io, per sottotitoli enormi, per me adesso vabbè. Cotoretto lo intervistiamo, sì, sì, sì. Ma solo se Chad davanti a tutti. Va bene, allora bimbi belli, io credo che per oggi ho finito di tediarvi. Io vi ricordo che se c'è qualcuno in chat che è capitato per altre fonti su questa intervista, ma non fosse nel Discord italiano di Street Fighter, qui vedete un QR code, ma in chat ci dovrebbe essere un comando, comunque il bot ha mandato dei comandi per unirvi alla community e vi invito a farlo. Ma fa YouTube autogenerato? Sì, ma non era. Vorrei provare a fare un content un po' più curato, se possibile. Grazie del terone. Vediamo, l'idea, la cosa bella sarebbe fare un voice over, però non credo, cioè credo ci voglia veramente troppo tempo, purtroppo. Vendo a 10 €. C'ho il fisico, il QR code. È vero che girava al Kumite. Va bene, allora vi ricordo che stasera sul canale di Rotto Colone ci sarà il Falce e Rostello, dove giocherà il nostro Sellone, Stella Nascente, qui, mi raccomando, che non mi ricordo con chi gioca. Fai fare il voice over da A.K.I, non vedo l'ora, sì, mi sembra un'ottima idea. E non so se si può addirittura fare, no, Raid è presto, però contro Broski, non credo sia contro Broski, contro Armix, bravo, contro Armix, bene, bene. E poi ci saranno i 2 Cloud dopo questo. Quindi grazie davvero della compagnia, siete stati un amore, spero che questo vi sia piaciuto e vi abbia divertito come ha divertito me, io mi sono divertito un mondo a fare questa intervista, e ci vediamo la prossima settimana o al limite quella dopo con l'intervista a Random. Esatto, però devo andare via, faccio il rostello. E preparerò un altro form per l'intervista a Random. Se avete delle domande scrivetemele lì oppure scrivetemi in privato su Discord e cercherò di includerle nel mio filone. Va bene? Sta facendo video presentazione, io non vedo l'ora di vedere che video facciano stasera. Tra l'altro, fun fact prima di chiudere, 10 minuti prima dell'inizio dell'intervista abbiamo avuto un cazzo di terremoto magnitudo 3.7 a Siena. Quindi io ero tipo, oh cazzo, inizieranno le scosse a catene e dovrò annullare tutto. Poi grazie a Dio non ci sono state. Da giro sta vedendo la tua intervista con Garnet, perfetto, ottima idea. Vediamo se riesco a farlo più che altro. No, non credo me lo faccia fare. Che palle non avere l'accesso. Allora, vediamo un po'. Ah, no, invece ho l'accesso, signori. Let's go, perfetto. Tutto a posto. Allora, canale. Non mi si sente 2 volte, vaffanculo. Bene, Negalli a Siena, esatto. Mercalli, Negalli. Va bene, allora io adesso vado, facciamo il raid a Gicone. Noi ci vediamo stasera alla Falce Rostello e la prossima volta con una nuova intervista. Fate bravi, mangiate le verdure e citando il nostro potentissimo Elter vi mando un bacino e un abbraccio. Fate a modo. Grazie di essere stati qui.